Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon. We're going to start in just a minute, so if everybody wants to take their seats, get situated, we're going to start in just like a minute here. All right, good afternoon. Good afternoon, everyone. How you doing? Thank you for coming out to 2024 Local Lit. We appreciate you. My name is Kyle Burkett, and I'm a librarian here with the San Jose Public Library. For the first-timers that have never been to a Local Lit before, this is an annual event that's co-hosted by San Jose Public Library and San Jose State University, and it celebrates local authors and their books. Today, you'll get the pleasure of hearing from around 20 authors who are here to share a little bit about their work. You'll have the opportunity to ask them questions, meet with them, and even buy a copy of their books if you so desire. We have divided them into 4 panels, and they're organized by a common theme. And at the beginning of each panel, the authors will take about a minute and a half to introduce themselves and their work. After that, we allow about 20 minutes for a Q&A session moderated by one of our librarians here at King Library. And we have microphones available. The moderators will have microphones that they can give to you if you have any questions to ask the authors. Just raise your hand, we'll come around, we'll get you a microphone. In just a minute, we're gonna hear some opening remarks from our very own city librarian, Jill Bourne, as well as San Jose State University's engineering and assessment librarian, Anamika Magwalu. We also want to take a moment to acknowledge that while we gather at San Jose State University, we are gathered on the ethno-historic tribal territory of the Tamian Ohlone, who are the direct ancestors of the lineages enrolled in the Muwekma Ohlone tribe and who were missionized into missions Santa Clara, San Jose, and Dolores. The land on which San Jose State University is established was and it continues to be of significance to the Muwekma Ohlone tribe. We also recognize that the ancestors of the Muwekma Ohlone constructed and maintained the 3 Bay Area missions. Our campus extends to surrounding areas that held Tupantak, a traditional roundhouse which was once located at the historic Lope Inigo land grant, Rancho Posole Mi y Positas de las Animas, the Little Well of Souls. And also Marcelo Pio and Cristobal's land grant, Rancho Olistoc, which were places of celebration and religious ceremonies, as well as nearby ancestral heritage shell mounds that served as the tribe's traditional cemetery sites and territorial monuments. San Jose State University also desires to honor the military service of the Muwekma men and women who have honorably served overseas during World War I, World War II, Korea, Vietnam, Desert Storm, Iraq, and who are still serving in the United States Armed Forces today. You should have received a ticket as you entered the room. We will be raffling off some door prizes at the end of this event, which will include copies of some of our current and past local lit authors. So we encourage you all to stay to the end of the event. I also want to draw your attention to the drinks and refreshments located at the rear of the room. I see many of you have found that table already. Feel free to enjoy a snack or two if you'd like. There are trash cans around the room, so just please dispose of your waste. And without further ado, I am pleased to introduce our city librarian, Jill Bourne.
Okay, thank you so much, Kyle. It's great to see you all here today. As Kyle said, I'm Jill Bourne. I have the amazing job of being city librarian in San Jose, which means I get to be the director of the San Jose Public Library, or the librarian, which is a great title as well. I'm so excited to be here for the 12th annual Local Lit program, which is one of my favorite. I look forward to every year. It's fun. You get to meet all these amazing authors. You get to talk to them about their process, hear from really interesting panel discussions, and also get your hands on their books, which is the best part. So I'd like to extend my sincere thanks to all the authors who are here today who have generously donated copies of their books to our library collection. So you will be able to check them out. Yay! Yeah. And as we provide a platform for authors to share their stories, we also hope to inspire the next generation of writers. And foster that love of reading in our greater community. So I want to take this opportunity to invite those of you who are interested in writing and publishing a book to explore all of the free resources that we have here at the library. Some of the resources we offer to help you get started on your literary journey include writing workshops, self-publishing platforms like Pressbooks and Short Edition, local history research through the California Room, which is located on the 5th floor here at the King Library, reservable study rooms, and one-on-one support from our talented librarians who also we refer to as our information experts. So I wanted to tell you that before I started, I have an explanation for my outfit. I actually have to go to a ugly Christmas sweater event right after this. I saw some people kind of smiling at me and I'm like, oh, that's right. You're wearing that. So that's what this is about. But before I wrap up, I want to, again, extend my thanks to our partners, the San Jose State University King Library team, for their ongoing support and collaboration in making this event possible. I want to give a special shout out to our dedicated library staff, especially our local lit event planning team, the SJPL librarians Kyle Burkett, who you just heard from, Natasha Lowell, Ebony Harris, Bill Bowman, and Lucille Boone, and our SJSU librarians Peggy Cabrera, Asi Barroso Ramirez, and Anamika Megwalu. Can we give a round of applause for them? I want to thank them all for all their hard work in organizing this event. And lastly, I just want to remind you to browse all the books and connect with authors. Remember that that the library is always here for you as a resource, as a writer, and also as a reader. And two, that books do make amazing gifts. And why? Because you can open them again and again, right? So thank you all for being here to attend Local Lit, and I hope you have a great day. Thank you. Oh. And now I'm going to introduce my colleague, Anamika.
Thank you, Jill. Good afternoon, everyone. Good to see you all. I'm Anamika Megwalo. I'm the Engineering and Assessment Librarian from San Jose State University. Dean Math, the university librarian, could not attend today. So I have the pleasure to do the opening remarks, and he sends his regrets for that. So today is the 12th annual Local Lit. And I always enjoy the collaboration between SJPL and SJSU in highlighting our local authors, right? And I, every time I come to this event, I always leave inspired and full of ideas. And not that I have started any book writing, but hopefully one day, right? Um, But what I think that storytelling is very difficult, right? But it's also very necessary thing because it has the power to bring everyone together in one place and spark conversations and uh, and talk about important things, right? So as we were reviewing these selections, uh, we were very excited, all of us in the committee. We were very excited to see different genres, themes, and perspectives. And I'm curious to learn about the author's journey, their source of inspiration, their struggles, and their plans for future publications. This event is not just an opportunity to showcase literary works. I hope it's also an event to make connections with each other, right? Beyond this room. So I hope you get to go around, meet with others, meet with different authors, uh, grab some snacks, relax and enjoy. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, Jill and Amika. We appreciate you being here. It's always great to hear from you both. And we appreciate your ongoing support of Local Lit. So at this time, we're going to introduce our first panel, which will be our poetry and fiction authors. And it will be moderated by SJPL librarian Bill Bowman. If we can have our first group of authors come up and join us at the table here, bring your name tags if you would, and then we can get started.
Okay, there we go. Thank you. So while many of the books today are nonfiction or autobiographical, where people sift through the data of their minds or sift through data outside to inform us of what they've found, these wonderful authors sift through the imagination, whether with prose or with poetry. They give flight to either a well-constructed sentence or a beautiful sentence that gives us something new to think about. So I'm going to open up the first question, and then if people want to ask questions after my first one, they may do so. Otherwise, I will continue with mine. So my first question to everyone is, what led you to write this book? Writing a book is a hard project. And was there a particular moment in particular or event that comes to mind? And I guess I'll go at the end here and all the way toward me.
I think why this book came together, I've been writing and sending things out for like 14 years, and some things get rejected and rejected again, but some things luckily get published, and I kept those and tried to think of it into a book, which surprisingly it did. It deals with, and what made me want to pursue a book is people I love and care about are dying. So I wanted to give them something to remember me by and them by, and just see where it goes. That's
Hi, I'm Hillary. Can you hear me? Thank you. This is my book. It's called Stitched on Me. I was born in Virginia and I spent most of my life in the South. I grew up a woman in the South, and then I moved at the age of 50 to the Bay Area. And it took me until 50 to kind of look back at my past in the South and realize everything. Yep, I should be a button on the right.
Yeah, that'd be good.
Sort of how I'd grown up and what the expectations are of women everywhere, but especially growing up in the South, and how I wanted to take off those expectations. So my book is a lot about growing up. It's also about women. It's also about fashion and having elderly parents, and even Jennifer Lopez shows up in this book. So that's me. Hi.
I'm Deborah LaFall, and I have lived in San Jose for 55 years. I am originally from Los Angeles, but I came up here to go to San Jose State at age 17. It ended up staying. So here I am. I've always had a fascination with words. Even when I was in elementary school, first grade, second grade, I would make up little stories and write them down and draw pictures to match. And then as I, advanced through school, I had other interests, but I always wanted to get back to writing. And then I, got married, raising a family, never had time. So when I retired, I said, that's the first thing on my list. So I took a creative writing class in 2014 and have never looked back. And I was drawn to poetry most, even though in the class we got an overview of fiction, creative nonfiction, memoir, and poetry. I was drawn to poetry most. So after the class, I started submitting my work here and there, and I also got a lot of rejections. I still do get a lot of rejections, but the few that got published, I just started collecting those, and that was my first book, a collection of rejections that came to be this book. But my most recent book is called Homage, and it's a collection of golden shovel poems. I went to a workshop one time and learned about golden shovel poems, which I had never heard of. And they're basically poems that use pre-existing poems as inspiration, use their words, use all of the words in the poem as end words to create a new poem, end words of lines to create a new poem. So that's what these are, about 60 golden shovel poems, which pays honor to poets who came before me. So thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, everybody. My name's Brooke French. I write thrillers and suspense. So I have always loved reading and books, and I would spend all of my time in one if I could, and I've pretty much always been that way. I started out as a lawyer. I practiced as a litigator in a big Atlanta firm for 14 years of pretty much abject misery. And the first book I wrote, the kernel of it came from a real life event. I was collecting on a judgment, and in Georgia, you can take whatever's in a safe deposit box to do that. So if you go to the bank and you pull up the defendant's money out, you can also get into the whatever goods they have there. And I thought to myself, well, Jesus, what could be in one of these things? You know, is it a kill list? Is it a confession? And that really just springboarded me into what if. So my first book that I wrote was The Carolina Variant, which was based on that what if string of thinking. It's a pandemic book. It's about a pandemic. I finished it in early 2020 and went to query it. And you can imagine that didn't go very well because it was kind of in bad taste. It felt in bad taste to do that then. But that started me on my journey, and I couldn't stop. Once I did that, I got down a research rabbit hole, and all of my subsequent books have been because I got another kernel. I found something in research and I couldn't let it go. And now we're 4 books in. My 4th book is about a third of the way, half the way done right now. So that's me.
Hello, my name is Rebecca Gomez-Farrell, and my published books are Epic Fantasy, The Wings Rising duology from Meerkat Press. I have always wanted to be a writer ever since I was a little girl. It's the only job that I ever wrote down for myself. And luckily, through my husband being steadily employed, I am able to be a writer full-time, which is very exciting. These particular books, the first book was written because I, needed to write a book. These are the first book manuscripts that I have ever written and completed, and I am lucky that they have been published. Many authors have a lot of shelved manuscripts in a drawer, and these were taken up, so I'm very excited about that. But I originally approached writing them because I wanted to portray 2 cultures that were incredibly different. One with like the reverse morals, everything that you value as good, courage, helping each other is viewed as bad, that if you have those qualities, you are like the worst, the lowest of the low. And then the other country is noble qualities are praised and good to be with. And through the spiritual horror that arises and threatens these two cultures, they end up having to work together. And one of the main point of view characters has to wrestle with what it's like to suddenly be plunged into a world in which everything she's been taught is valuable. She's always been taught, you kill to get ahead. You are cruel to take over the other castle, whatever it may be. And now she's like, wait, people live differently? What is that like? So that was the main theme that I wanted to play with when I was writing those books. But the shorter version of what they are about is a false patriarchal religion, real women power, romance, horror, magic, mystical creatures, and murder. So those are that. The second book takes place 5 years after the first book's story is complete, and it kind of does what I think a lot of fantasy often doesn't do, which is deal with the aftermath and what it's like combining cultures. It's not just a happy ending. There are still challenges to take on. And of course, there's, a new evil villain who has the might to swallow a moon, and they have to defeat that too, so.
Hi, I'm R.L. King. I'm Robin is my first name. I'm the author of the, they got my cat up there. I'm the author of the Alistair Stone Chronicles, which is an urban fantasy series, indie published, about a charming professor of occult studies who's from England and is currently teaching at Stanford, and the various magical mayhem that he gets into as you do. This is the first book. It's called Stone in a Hard Place. I am a very impatient writer, so the indie revolution was sort of tailor-made for me. I wasn't really happy to try to, submit books to traditional publishers and wait for them to get back to me and whatnot. So I just kind of set off and never really stopped. So I'm now working on book 39 of this series. This one was published in 2015, so I'm just kind of chugging along. Plus, I have a couple of spin-off series set in the same universe that are currently 5 books and 3 books, and a couple of books that were published by a game company that I work for in the role-playing game called Shadowrun, if you're familiar with that. It's cyberpunk meets urban fantasy. Yeah, I've wanted to write all my life. So the advent of the web and being able to publish on the web, and then the whole self-publishing revolution was really perfect for me. So I've been a full-time writer since 2017, and I really don't plan to go back to having a real job at this point. I hope that people will keep buying my books so I don't have to. Thank you.
So now that we've had some introductions, I want to open it up for the audience. Does anyone have any questions here?
Thank you. Hi, writers. My name is Martin Tran, and my question for you guys is, how long did it take you guys to write your first book, and what were some of the restrictions and then dealing with constructing the book that you guys wanted to write?
Why don't we start on this side now?
Okay. I don't really remember how long it took me to write the first one, but generally it takes me anywhere from 2 to 3 months to write a book. My books are usually around 100,000 words. I'm mostly a pantser. I like to have like some idea of where the beginning, middle, and end is going to be, but aside from that, I just kind of let things flow organically, because that's part of the fun for me, is seeing where the characters take me and what interesting ideas come up in the process of the book. So, you said, what kind of problems did you have? Yeah, every once in a while I'll get to a point where I really don't know what's going to happen next, and then I kind of have to put the book aside for a little while and just let the kind of juices flow organically under the surface, and eventually something pops up. It always has. I've got faith in the process at this point because it's never failed me, but there have been a couple times when I've been a little worried.
I'm the opposite. My first book, which is Wings Unseen, I started writing in college, which was about probably about 20 or 2000. The year 2000 is probably when I first started writing scenes in that first book. And it was not finished and submitted out for publication until 2012. So 12 years for my first book, but I was working on it in little bits here and there, you know, going to a coffee shop on the weekend once a month sort of a thing versus regularly working on it. The second book I actually wrote in about 4 months, which is the fastest that I have ever written that amount of words. I do have another manuscript I was working on at the time that I've just finished draft 5 of for another series, and that one has taken me probably 6 years. So I have a wide variation between how long it takes me from beginning to end. I did have a deadline for book 2, which really helps with actually getting that churned out in a decent time period. Challenges, honestly, are often the business side of writing can be very discouraging. I'm also a short story writer, and I used to run a group called Women Who Submit Lit, which still has a Bay Area chapter, which is great. And it encourages women to submit their work out on submission, and we cheer on every rejection that comes in. We cheer on every single time somebody hits send on a submission button. But to be a writer and to have a professional career like that, where you're going a traditional route, and it's different for the indie route as well, but there's so many challenges going that way. The marketing, woo. But the traditional route, you really have to prepare yourself for rejection, and you have to learn to celebrate it as part of the job of being a writer, because otherwise it can grind you down.
So my first book took me 18 months to write. I was learning the process with the first one, kind of learning how to write as I went, so it took a little bit longer. I write books that have a STEM basis, so a lot of science in them, and I'm not a scientist. So there's a lot of research that takes a significant amount of time for me to do that. Every subsequent book that I've written has taken about a year. The challenges, I agree, the publication process itself can be pretty gnarly. And then specific to my writing, sometimes I get myself in a little over my head with what I've decided I want a character to do. And then I have to take a step back and figure out how it's actually done. I sent my main character, in my most recent book to the Arctic to do scientific research, and then realized I had no idea how to do that. So I found a group of scientists at the University of Alaska Fairbanks to work with me, and they taught me how to do it. But of course, that took some time.
So for my first book, which is Worthy, the one that I got plenty of rejections on at first, but eventually, and the reason why I pulled this together was that eventually each of the poems were accepted by a publisher. So these are somewhere out in magazines and journals somewhere, and I just pulled them all together in one place. It took me probably, let's see, I started writing seriously in 2014. It was published in 2017, and a year of that was for the publication process. So I'd say about 2 years to bring all the poems together. And as far as challenges, just finding my way around in terms of knowing where to submit. Now I know. I found out the difference between submitting to a contest, which can break your piggy bank, or responding to calls for submission, which are either usually free or $2, $3, or $5. I opted for the latter because contests can cost anywhere from $15 to $50. And understandably, the organizations that run the contest are usually volunteer, but they use that money to go towards the prize for the contest. So just being able to learn and understand how to submit work, where to submit work. I use submittable.com a lot. As a matter of fact, right now I have 20 poems pending and another 24 that I've sent in that haven't been noted as in progress yet. So I'm submitting practically almost every day. And I only submit to places that say that you can do simultaneous submissions, because sometimes it takes a long, long time for magazines and journals to get back to you. It could take up to 6 months. It could take up to a year. So I submit to multiple places. So I like the ones that say simultaneous submissions allowed. So those are the ones I go for. So that just learning how and where to submit had initially posed a challenge for me, but now I pretty much know my way around pretty well.
Similarly, I'm always submitting, not every day, but I try to get out at least 2 submissions a week using the same resources. I'm usually trying to write every day, at least draft something most days a week, usually at about 5 o'clock in the morning when I've had my first coffee. This particular collection probably took about 5 years of just writing and then about a year to put together. And then it made the rounds. I think it got rejected about 20 times, which isn't too bad. I knew the publisher and I had aimed it towards a particular publisher in some ways, and they took it. And then it was a relatively fast process after that. But again, I'm also constantly trying to get my work out and make sure I have work to send out. As far as constraints, really the main constraint is my work may not always fit every publication. And sometimes putting together a collection, it's not a story or a nonfiction book. So sometimes it's loosely grouped around an idea, and sometimes just figuring that out can be a little bit of a puzzle. So a fun puzzle, though.
So for me, this collection took 14 years. And it's not because I worked on it every day and that type of thing. Sometimes poems take time. Sometimes you hate it for like 13 years and then one day you like it. And that's how it goes. I worked with an editor with this book. I met him 14 years ago and he said it wasn't ready. I should work on it. Then I reconnected him 12 years ago and he said, it's still not ready. Work on it some more. And 2 years later, this happened. I think the biggest challenges, other than administrative and um, rejections, is the mental toll writing does have on the process. There's sometimes you deal with doubt, and sometimes you can't say that to a lot of people, or sometimes you have these feelings of like, well, I should send it out. I need support, and people like your family try to be supportive, but maybe don't know, or maybe your family or people around you like, well, it's a waste of time, which happened to me before. So you have to really want it, like really, really want it to get through it, because you get published a book, like maybe get lucky and get it soon. But if you don't really want it, what does it mean? So.
Thank you. So we have time for just one more question here. And we'll start at the opposite end. Um, oh, ah.
Hi, my name is Anaya. I actually have a book published already, Layla and the Dolphins, and thank you. I wrote that book just because I was bored and I was not allowed on the screen and it was raining. So I was like, okay, I'm bored. So I just started playing, I just started writing. I always like to read. So yeah, I finished writing it and then I got it published. So I have a question. When you face writer's block, how do you like get over it and like just keep writing?
Okay, we'll start at the far end there.
The greatest way to get rid of writer's block, I feel, is to live. Live your life. Do things you love to do. If writing is your entire life, I get it. It's been mine for a long time. But sometimes you got to go out and go to the zoo. Sometimes you got to go out and go to McDonald's and get sick off eating off fries. Live your life. Writing will be there for you because you love it. Love yourself too.
Following up on that, write down what you saw at McDonald's, write down what you saw at the zoo. Any words on a page are better than no words on a page. You can edit the words, you can rearrange the words, but just put words on a page. If I get really blocked, I'll just write down, what do I see? What do I see right now? The cat is in the windowsill, the coffee is spilled. Any words on a page are better than none, so you can unblock yourself that way. So go to McDonald's, but then take a notebook.
I never actually sit down to write a poem. A poem comes to me when I see or experience something. I write about everyday things. For example, I was sitting at my kitchen window one day, and it was really cold and raining, and this man was running down the sidewalk in a t-shirt, shorts, and flip-flops. So I wrote about that, and it got published. Or I sometimes, if there's a call for submissions that is themed, then I think about, okay, what in my experiences has happened where I can write about this theme. So then at that point, then I try to come up with something to match the theme that is being called for. But most of my writing is just everyday stuff.
Okay, I have two strategies that I use for writer's block. The first is passive, the second is active. So I think when I'm really stuck on something, most of the time it solves itself when I'm doing something where my brain is not fully engaged. I'm in the shower, I'm running, I'm driving. You get this kind of floaty place in your mind where creativity can sort of find its spot. And a lot of times if I've got a character, I can't figure out what to do next, that's when it'll just pop into my brain. So if I have time, I'll do that. If I don't have time, I'm trying to push forward for a deadline or whatever it is, I'll sit down and I'll say, okay, the character's here. I want to take them to A to B. I don't know how I'm going to get there. I don't know what I'm going to do. And I start making a list of options and I just write out options. This could happen, this could happen, this could happen. And I'll go and go and go and go and go until I run out of ideas. And then I find the craziest option that I've written down and I do that.
These are all great ideas and I need to pay more attention to them. So well, first I want to reiterate, refilling your well is really important when you feel that you've just put everything out onto the page and you don't know what else to write and you're tired of writing. Find other creative things, go to a museum, go to an art gallery, read books, see other people's creativity, and that can often re-inspire your own. But my biggest writer's block is honestly just opening my Word file every day. It's just opening up that blank white page or whatever I'm at, because so many things just distract me from getting to it and prioritizing it. So the easy way to do that is never close that file. As soon as I actually start typing, I suddenly find that this isn't a block for me anymore. And so just the act of keeping it open works for me. But if I don't know what to do next in a story that I'm writing, a free write will often work for me. Like say there's even like a side character that I don't know very well in that story. I will just let myself let's just get into their head and write whatever's going on. And more often than not, I end up getting like a new plot element or something to add to the actual book that I'm writing. So it just helps get those creative juices flowing to think of the next step.
Yeah, these have all been a lot of really great suggestions, and I do use some of them myself, but one that I haven't heard mentioned yet. I've heard before that one of the easiest ways to learn how to do something is to teach somebody else how to do it. And so what I do is I try to talk to someone, and it's usually my husband who's sitting in the audience back there, and he has a superpower. He hates it, but it's true. It's true. He is great at coming up with ideas that I don't want to use. Because I'll sit and talk to him. I'll say, here's where I am. I'm stuck, because he knows these characters as well as I do. And so I'll say, I'm stuck. I don't know where to go from here. And he'll come up with what he thinks is this great idea, which is a great idea. It's just not the one I want right now. But what that does is it helps me understand what I do want. Oh yeah, I don't want him to do that, but you know what? He really could do this. And that'll get me off and running again. And I value that highly, even though it frustrates the heck out of him because he always wants me to use his ideas and I usually don't. But but it does help me a lot. So talk to somebody else and just talk through your ideas with them, and it might trigger something in the back of your mind and get you going again.
Well, thank you all very much. Give them a big round of applause, and we'll go on to our next panel. Kyle.
Thank you very much, Bill. And just one more round of applause for our authors. If we can have our next group of authors come up and join us, we will have Lucille Boone, an SJPL librarian, who will be moderating this panel. This will be Stories of Community. And as soon as we get our authors up front, we can begin.
So our authors are Sarah Fashandi, Lebo Myers, Grisel Nunez, Adam Duran, and Lily Espinoza. Maybe not quite in that order, but we'll see how it goes. It looked well. Now, this panel has been given the title Stories of Community. So before the authors introduce themselves and mention a bit about their book, I would like you, as part of your introduction, to mention the sort of community that sort of inspired you or you were in about the time you had the idea for the book, and maybe the community of people whom you're directing the book to that you have written. Let's see. Sarah, would you start, please?
Yes, of course. Hi, everyone. My name is Sarah Fashandi, author of Message in a Matchbox. My book, what inspired me was a family reunion with all my siblings, their spouses, and our children. We used to get together during summertime when the children were in elementary school or middle school. And to make it exciting, we had contests. My family lives all over US. So we used to gather in California. We rented an Airbnb, and all 19 of us will be in the house. And that particular year, we had the best childhood story. And my oldest brother, our children were the judges, I have to say. And my oldest brother, who wrote 2 paragraphs, how to make money out of a trench in front of my dad's shop back in Tehran, won the contest. And later that evening, because my family is very competitive, I thought my brother just made it up. And I actually approached him later in the evening when everybody was asleep. I went to him and I said, "Did you make up that story?" Because we were 8 children. My parents had 8 children. My brother was child number 1. And I had no idea that we were poor because I'm child number 6. My brother's life was completely different from mine. We were very poor to a point that sometimes we didn't have food on the table, but we didn't serve food on the table. It was a piece of cloth on the floor. And sometimes my sister, my oldest sister, was so hungry that she would take out the paint from the wall to eat. I didn't know that. And then I decided that I have to write the stories to capture them just for the family and for our children, because I wanted them to know that we worked very hard to get to where we are today. Nothing was given to us on a silver plate, like our children. I feel our children are spoiled in a way because they have everything. And I wanted them to know that our parents worked very hard. My hat's off to especially my mom, who had a bigger vision for her children. She sewed and sewed to save money so that, and put the money aside for our education abroad. So my brother came to US 1974. And then he decided to bring the rest of the family to US and give us a much better opportunity, to get educated here. And then we just happened to stay here because the government changed. Okay, I give it back to the next.
Hello, I am Libo Myers. Unlike everyone here who's a writer, I never think I'm a writer. I just happen to publish a book. So my book is Limp Forward. It's a memoir about my life. I'd say my real identity is that I'm a tech executive in this little company called Apple. And I never thought I would write a book, but what triggered this book is that during the pandemic time, there was a wave of Asian hate. And I thought, I got to do something about it. I need to really, initially I thought I would just write some article, publish it, and that's it. And then I started to talk to my dad and then start writing about my life and his life and ask a lot of questions. Before I know it, it got thicker and thicker. And then I circled around in my friend circle and everybody said, you got to publish this. And that's what triggered it. And I think that also answers the question that your community, because I'm the only person at Apple who's alive who's as an executive ever published a book, because that's not what we do. We don't talk about our life. We have this, we respect our own privacy and our users' privacy. So I think that's but my community supported me. All the Apple other executives basically said, yes, go publish this book. It's worth the world to see. So yeah, this is the about my life, and it talked about mostly disability, perseverance, and success. Because I grew up, when I was 1 year old, I got polio, and I was paralyzed for a long time. And throughout my life, I was told so many no's. For example, I was told that I can't go to the university because I got polio. It doesn't matter what my grade is. I can't study computer science because of my polio, because that's for perfect people. And we're labeled not so perfect. And then, so that's why I just removed all those obstacles in my life. I came to this country. I applied the computer science. And I end up finished my PhD in chemistry and then master in computer science at the same time. And I stayed in Silicon Valley ever since. And I also talk about my life, how I met my husband after, him as the 87th man I've ever dated. And then I really did data analysis with a machine learning algorithm, and it converged on him. It was a lot of fun story. So I highly encourage all the ladies out there, if you are still looking, check out my very scientific approach. Okay, that's all about me. Thank you.
Sounds like you should be a dating coach too. That's what I'm hearing is your other side job. So hi, everybody. So my name's Giselle Nunez. I don't know that that I consider myself an author either, but it's really a passion of mine to share my life journey with others. And if I can help others, if they can take some nuggets from my life experiences and my journey, then I feel like my purpose in this life is fulfilled. To my mother's, chagrin, she thinks that I share too much, but that's just how it goes. So the community that I was in and I'm helping and I'm serving with this book is really those that want to serve as public officials or just in public service in general. So my book is Life in the Fishbowl, How to Thrive and Succeed in elected office, how to survive and thrive in elected office. And how the book came about was because I was in this community for 20 years. I was a political spouse for 20 years, and a lot of spouses came to me for advice. How do I navigate life in the fishbowl? Because you are in a fishbowl, whether you are a local elected official, whether you're statewide or national, you have to deal with a fishbowl. And most of the time, 99.9% of the time when people are considering to run for office, they don't know any of this stuff. No one talks to you about what to expect once you are in office, once you experience even life in a campaign. How does that affect your families? How do you manage with negativity? How do you manage all kinds of people that now want to be your friends and you don't really know how to trust them or not? There's a lot of, and also how do you figure out who is it that you are and what's your moral compass and why is it that you want to run? No one really teaches you these things and you learn it the hard way. So my goal was to help put together a one-stop shop to give someone an overview of what to expect so that they can survive and thrive, bring their families into that experience because the families are also affected. But not necessarily, you don't only just have to run for office to read the book. If you're interested in just politics in general and just understanding how it works and the personal side of politics, this is also the book for you because it really showcases what life is like and what someone has to manage. And perhaps part of that message is I would love for someone to maybe grow a little more empathetic to the life and the perspective that these folks have to have once they say yes to public service. So that's essentially my book and my purpose. So thank you for having me here today.
Hello, my name is Adam Duran, and I'm the author of Live Life on Purpose. I'm from the proverbial east side of San Jose. Go east side, Mount Pleasant, MP, Cardinal. And I'm a retired sheriff lieutenant watch commander here in Santa Clara County with 30 years of service. Retired 3 years ago, a month. My life has been a life of service. In fact, when I went to college, even though I didn't graduate from high school, then I started making up trying to figure out how to do this life. I actually went to college and to serve people. So my life at 18, I began to want to serve people. Then I went into public service for 30 years. 3 years ago, I retired. A month before I retired, I said, I have to do something more. I have to get into the schools. I have to get into the jails. I have to get into the libraries. And I'm like, okay, so I'm only one person. How do I do this? Ta-da, write a book. So a month before I retired, I began, and how did I start to write a book? Never in my wildest dreams had I ever thought about writing a book. I got on Google. How do I write a book? How do I write a book? Of course, you got a lot of resources. And then I said, I'm the kind of guy, once I decide to do something, I burn my boats. Either I succeed or I sink. And sinking is not an option for me. So started writing a book. I said, I can get this thing done in 6 months. That doubled. Took me a year to write, almost to the day. It took me a year to write. There was times, I live here in San Pedro Square. There was times where I didn't come out of my apartment. I went down and get my food and get back up. And then it was like napping, just trying to get this thing figured out. One of the first things I did as far as how to do this, I developed a team. So I got a team of people to get different perspectives and thoughts and critical think my way into writing this book. Who the book is for is a guy like me who I felt low self-esteem, insecurities, the proverbial east side. I kind of bought into that thought process. If you look at my book, you'll see that kind of a thug kind of guy. How did I transform? And my book was written for anybody who is struggling, a young person trying to figure out their way, struggling, or a person trying to start over. My book is for them. And I'll give you insights on what worked for me and what works for my studies, other people, and how to really succeed on goal setting and goal achievement. And it's just an honor to be here, and it's a privilege to be here. And by the way, Giselle, I think her book was written for me. So now the next step. I just bought her book, by the way. Yes. Thank you. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Thank you so much, everyone who's here. It's great to see everyone. I am Dr. Lily E. Espinoza, and my book is called Centering Pura Vida. And the audience and community that it's for is people who are daughters of immigrants or women who are thinking about going into political life or high-level, high-power positions. And it's a nonfiction book, and it's based off of my over a 20-year career working in higher education. And I talk about how when I was 19, I basically got a vision that I needed to become a college president. And for the last 20 years, I was making steps towards that goal, but I also got very sidetracked and got laid off and lost my job and had to start over. And my career was taking zigzags. And I thought I was off track to even stay in administration. And so the book was published this year, and it was published during the summertime. And I thought it was going to be a swan song, like a goodbye to working in higher education. I was saying goodbye to my dream about becoming a college president, and I was letting that go. And I was thinking about Pura Vida, which is this philosophy about life, about just appreciating the little things, appreciating the little steps that you take in your career, and just being thankful that I could do what I could do in my career, even though I didn't achieve my ultimate goal. But then I got a job as a vice president. And so that's what I'm doing now. And so the book came out, and I tell everybody I probably wouldn't have published it had I known I was going to be a vice president, because there's some stories in there that show some really ugly sides of what happened. And it's based on what I experienced. I had some times that I was getting canceled as an administrator. My decisions were being questioned. I had students petition for me to be put out of work. And when you make decisions as a high-level leader, you have to be strong and you have to have courage. And I've always centered that Pura Vida philosophy that as long as I'm there, you're going to know I'm there, and I'm going to be making an impact, and I'm going to be, rocking the boat, and I'm not going to be trying to please everyone, but I'm trying to do what's right. And so that's what the book is all about. And the community is women of color, women who want to achieve, women who have high aspirations, women who want to run for political office, women who want to make a difference in their community. And being the daughter of an immigrant, a mother who didn't speak English, all of that's in the book. And it's really helping women to aspire to reach higher.
Thank you. Now, it's one thing to have an idea, have a good story. It's another thing to put it on paper, put it into words. And I would like to, Adam's already said a little bit about this, but I would like to hear from all of you as to what your writing process is like. How did you discipline yourself to actually write this book? Lily, would you start?
Sure. The discipline. Well, I started this book. This is my third book. And I started this process because I was asked to write a chapter on an anthology. And the anthology was supposed to be about predicting the future. And so I sat down and I did a thought experiment about what higher education will look like 50 years from now, specifically for Latinos in higher education. And so I did this thought experiment, and I wrote this chapter, and I submitted it to the anthology, and it got rejected. And they said, well, you weren't really focused on Chicanos, you were only focused on the Latinos. And I'm just kind of like, and so I'm going to publish this myself. And so that became one of the first chapters that I wrote for this new book. And then I put together some other reflections and some research papers that I actually did about working in DEI efforts, diversity, equity, and inclusion, and my experiences working with students of higher education, and especially Latino students, and what we could do better and what we could do to make things more efficient. And it was looking at work that I've already done and looking at some of my previous written work. And so I keep everything. And I think I always encourage everybody, if you have journals or if you have research papers, if you have papers you've written for, your class, whatever, those can be part of your frameworks for what you want to do in the future. And that's what I've done. So I've put together some papers I wrote like 10 years ago, and then the other chapter from last year, and I compiled it all together. And it probably took me about 6-7 months to get it all together. But once I had an idea of what it was going to look like, to me, it's about sequential, making sense and making sure it goes from point A to point B and to point C. And once I feel happy with the outline of what it's going to look like, I just plug and play. It's like, okay, get that chapter, and then put it all together. But it was due to a request to get started, and that's how I got started on it.
So my book is a self-improvement book, personal development book based on my life. So that's why I got the team together to give me, that knew me and that understood the East Side experience and beyond. And I actually got on a whiteboard, and we had meetings, several meetings of me writing things down, putting my thoughts together. And I wanted it to be a book of service, of giving back, and that showing people if Adam can succeed, anybody can. This is for everybody that wants to succeed and or is struggling to succeed. And that's who the book's for. And that's how I got my thought process. Well, again, once I decide to write or do whatever I do, I just don't stop until it's done. You know, I'm a marathon runner, so, you know, it's not a 10K, this is a marathon. I happen to be a marathon runner, so this is what I do. Thank you.
Sounds like everybody should have a team like Adam's. So my first book was Take Charge of Your Brand, and I had been teaching personal branding for about a decade. So when I wrote my first book, that was in 6 months, because I just had to take everything that I had been teaching for a decade, put it on paper, and then you could just go through that process. The second book, I had an idea of what I wanted to communicate, but I wanted it to be validated. And I also didn't want to I didn't want the book to just be stories of what my former husband and I had experienced, but I really wanted my thoughts and this hypothesis that I had on what you experience and what I think, what I wanted to tell folks. I didn't want that just to be from our perspective. So it took a year to interview 12+ former and current elected officials. This was in 2019. And so that started, and that validated a lot of my hypotheses and the outline that I had written out already for the book. Then, funny enough, and people always find this interesting, my former husband and I divorced, but we were amicable, we stayed friends, and we finished the book after we divorced because we felt that the book was that important to get out, and all of these stories that these elected, current and former elected officials, officials wanted to also share. So this book took 4 years in the making, primarily because just of the COVID, divorce, interviews. But essentially, it took me about a year to write. Once we decided to get back on it. So that was my process.
I think now I reflect, I did everything wrong. So I did the wrong Google search. How does tech executive busy professional publish a book? And then, I find this company, basically I just talk and tell my story, and then they will write the book for me. And then, and I wasted about half a year because when they deliver me the manuscript, I don't like it, I hate it. And then I have to throw that all away and start all over again. So then I'm like you, Adam, when I do something, I really do it. So I only have Sunday as my free time. So every Sunday I get up 5 a.m. and I start writing until I drop dead. Usually that's basically 7 p.m. and I don't eat and I don't do anything. I just lock myself up in the room and I start writing. So the whole process took me 2 years of my Sundays, but I say that 1 year is about writing and get the story right, get the book right. And then 1 year is about publishing. And I didn't know that was that hard to just finish all the checklist at the end. Yeah, that's how long it took me.
So the family reunion occurred in 2017. And I started talking to my brother who lives in Chicago, after he left, after the family reunion. I collected all the stories. And I don't consider myself an author because by training, I'm a biochemist, but I work in a global supply chain in a medical device company, very demanding job. So when I had all the stories that my brother and I had discussed, I had written them down because I took a memoir writing class in Berkeley, and I was going to Berkeley every Saturday for almost 2.5 years, 3 years. So I learned how to write that way. But then I wrote the stories and I set them aside. And I didn't really know what to do with the stories until COVID happened. And I lost some family members. I lost some very close friends. And which made me thinking, what if I die? What if my family dies? What if something happens and I did not complete this task, this responsibility that I had? So I, like some of the authors here, I locked myself. Right after work, I would just go to my room and start writing till midnight every night. And then weekends, I said no to friends. And, because COVID was also, you couldn't really see anybody and I was getting bored. So my weekends were spent on, I pulled out all the stories. I talked to my brother in Chicago to sort of polish the stories. And then I decided to self-publish the books. I found an editor, co-editor, someone designed the page, front page of my book. And then I just put it on Amazon. This really was for the family first. And then I thought people should read the stories because they're so unique. My brother, when he was little, from nothing, he made stuff. He was so creative that he would go to a dumpster and find things. And then let's say if he wanted to make an incubator to grow chickens because he wanted to put more chickens on the table, because we would have chicken once a year when we had guests over. And he tried to figure out a way to hatch chickens from eggs. So he made a makeshift incubator that actually worked. And it's all in the story. So I guess what I'm trying to say is that you don't have to be fancy. You can be creative, just like my brother, to figure out a way to help the family. So that was my process.
Thank you all. Now, we will be having a short break soon, but there's time for one question from the audience.
Thank you all for being here and for sharing your processes and your journeys with us. As you wrote about communities in various ways in your book, I guess I would want to know if you think about your communities, your people, your tribe that you didn't necessarily write about. What's maybe one quality that you drew from your people in order to write the books?
Sarah, would you start?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think it wasn't more the community, it was more like my family, mostly my brother, and what he did when he was little. I have a different respect for my brother now because he didn't give up. He was bored, but he tried to do something about it. And then on the side, also my mom, who had a different vision. My mom, my dad was illiterate, never went to school. My mom finished ninth grade. She was forced into getting married to my dad, but she wanted her children to have something that she didn't have. And then through the stories that my brother told me, I learned that, if you persevere and you have a goal and you constantly focus on achieving that goal, it will happen. Something that my mom did. She had a goal. She wanted her children to be educated. All of us are educated. I have 3 sisters who have PhDs, are pharmacists. My brothers are all engineers. The rest of us are here. And I owe it to my parents, especially my mom, because she gave us a better life. And not just me, the next generation and the generations after that are having a much better opportunity.
Thank you. My answer is very similar to yours because I think the reason I'm here and become who I am is at least 3 generations of effort. In the book, in the last chapter, I actually wrote about the Chow family because we actually recorded the last 3,000 years of all the Chow family history. And then there are a lot of stories got lost, but I'd say that during my grandparents' time, there's starvation in their village. Many people just die from that starvation, but he decided that he's gonna just start walking somewhere. So he just bare feet and walked out of the village, and until he finds some food and find a job, and then he went back for his family and it got them out of that village that most people died there. And then my dad grew up in this village that it was poverty and everybody just be a farmer their whole life. But my dad decided that I am going to go to college. So he became the first college grad in that college in his village for the last hundreds of years. And then after my dad took me to the next ground, I was able to say that I'm going to go to the center of the world. I'm going to go to the US. I'm going to get my computer science degree. I'm going to work in the best company in the world. I'm going to be the best in that company and in Silicon Valley. So I think we all owe it, especially the immigrants. A lot of times we don't think about it's actually generations of effort so that we become the better self. Thank you.
So I think part of my purpose again in life, I'm just going to say, is to help improve the lives of others. And so I'm an immigrant. My family, I think, they didn't know what they were going to experience when I decided to marry someone who was in elected office. And so part of what I wanted to do with the book is also provide real stories to what perhaps perceptions were, and thank my parents and my family for putting up with all the shit that happens when you're in public office. There's a lot that you don't see behind the scenes, right? So part of writing the book was, thank you, family. You endured a lot. I really appreciate your support. And then the other piece is just helping improve the lives of others. And we're always striving to help others, right? Just as perhaps we had some assistance when we first immigrated here as well. So those are the two aspects of what I'm bringing from my tribe.
The community that inspired me is my community. And I saw the struggles on the east side. I struggled. I saw others that struggled. I had family members with life sentence in prison. So I saw the struggles. And so I knew that I just, when something starts pushing against you, that can just make you stronger if you have that perspective. And I felt all the struggles and what I saw in my own struggles, that I can do more. And it's just sharpening me up. That life was happening for me, not to me. I wasn't a victim. And when I understood that, I saw my community, where I'm from Story and White area, from the Mount Pleasant area. I saw that and I thought, you know what? I need to do more. And after I retired, but before I retired, I knew I wanted to give back. So that's what motivated me, and that's the community that motivated me.
My book has a cover that has a lot of cosmetology images on there. And in Mexico, there's a tradition of magical realism in their literary traditions. And so that falls on this idea about your connection to the cosmos and to the spirit, and to the greater purpose of why we're all here and what's the point of living and why is there life on this planet, and the connection of the unknown and the mystery. And that's sort of the philosophy of my Pura Vida, this idea that life is pure and we're here and we're breathing the same air, and that's amazing. And if I didn't have that unapologetically optimistic viewpoint, I probably wouldn't have been able to pick myself up all those different times in my career that I got knocked down. Being a single mother, being on welfare, driving for Lyft when you have a doctorate. It's just all those times I was told, no, 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 you're being laid off. Today's your last day. You can collect your paycheck. This is how you sign up for unemployment. Being in a job club with people at Goodwill because I was required to do that because I'm on unemployment, but then not giving up. And so I think in our Latino culture, and especially as children of immigrants, all of our parents came with a dream, came with a vision, and came with faith. And that's sometimes all they had. So I take so much gratitude and respect from my mom, who was 16 and didn't speak English and crossed the border by herself, alone, unaccompanied. And when I'm on welfare, I'm like, this is nothing compared to what my mom did. And every immigrant has that strength and has that power and has that connection to people who survived and people who said, I'm going to make today better than yesterday. And so that's the value that I take with me. And that's what I try to convey on the cover of my book about centering Pura Vida, because there's a connection between, you could see the image is a art piece and the woman is floating in space and she's using a watering can to water the marigold, which is connected to a corazon, the heart, because the Latino culture has a lot of cosmic and spiritual connections. And that's why I put that on the cover.
Please join me in thanking Lily, Adam, Isabel, Lebo, and Sarah. There is now a break of 10 minutes. Please stand up, stretch, say hello to one of your favorite authors, and we'll be back.
A little bit of the diplomat.
I didn't know. I was sitting next to the good life.
I forgot about that. I think so.
Yeah, totally.
Good job.
Really cool. That's good stuff. Good stuff. I love it.
Okay, thank you everybody for your patience. I hope everyone had a chance to get something to drink or something to eat. We are starting with the next panel. Panel 3 is stories of place, or another way to think about it is location, location, location. And so I wanted to give you all a reason why I was thinking about this topic in particular. So a place-based education and stories about place are really important as we think about where we come from, where our families and our communities come from. And that's one thing I noticed as I was reviewing the list of titles that for the authors that are here today, is they all have somewhat of a place-based focus on it. And so hopefully you weren't too surprised, authors, when you saw this on here, but it's my current research interest. So that's why you're here today. So I wanted to introduce everybody. We have Elizabeth Kyle, who's presenting on Haunted San Jose, Jen Gaston on the Sun Greeters, and Sally Ashton, who is presenting on Listening to Mars. We also had 2 other authors who are faculty here at SJSU. And what happens every year around the same time is that we all start getting sick from the stress of the semester. So they couldn't be here, but I want you to take a look at the LocalLit website. And in particular, I want you to take a look at the work by Dr. Carlos Alberto Sanchez. He has a book called Blooming in the Ruins, How Mexican Philosophy Can Guide Us Towards a Good Life. So take a look at his book. And then Keenan Norris has a book titled Chai Boy, Native Sons and Chicago Reckonings. So again, when you get a chance, look at these 2 authors. Right, authors, I have about 5 questions, but I'll try to give space for you all to ask questions too, because I know you're all excited about them, like me. All right, authors, so the first question is, can you tell us about your book? And I give you some options. You could summarize your book without giving away the conclusion. You could read a brief excerpt of your work, or you could briefly, in 1 minute or less, summarize your book and then do a quick reading of 1 to 2 minutes. So please, Elizabeth, do you want to start?
Hi, my name is Elizabeth Kyle. I am the author of Haunted San Jose, and I will tell you a little bit about my book. It's a collection of 36 different stories, so it's hard to choose just one to read as an example, but it is the preeminent historical account of hauntings in San Jose. So I chose 36 locations that are reported to be haunted. I investigate the ghost stories, and I also share the history. So I think it was really important for me to look into the context of each place, and to share a little bit about its history and the people that live there, but also it's a little bit spooky. I've got the stories and the folklore. So whether or not you believe in ghosts or whether you are interested in ghosts, there's a little something for everybody if you'd like to learn something more about San Jose.
Hi there, I'm Sally Ashton. I'm the author of Listening to Mars, which is not a place I've been. And it's a book of poetry, and it's basically a chronicle of the pandemic. And it's set against the I guess the sense of place about it is that we were pretty much locked into our homes. So the time of the lockdown that was corresponding with the several missions to Mars that created a sense of where in the world are we. I am going to read two brief pieces. I think it helps give a sense of place, the 2 places that I'm considering. The first is called Circumferences. When home was a closed circle inside an iron gate, when I spoke to lizards, advising them and looking for advice, when I was seen to consort with crows, a day should be more than a list. Proof of disappearing, an airport drop-off, a single dinner plate, rocket ship goodbyes. When I watched for rabbits coax the quail to stay with handfuls of tossed seeds. When I memorized the slippage of stars. When a coyote's hunting song tore at the nights. There were 100 ways of looking out the window. The heart complained, forever elsewhere. We spoke by pixel and digit. I made a steady stream of alterations. We sent each other hours of photos. when leaves told stories I couldn't comprehend, when I could not cajole the rain nor make the snow to fall, when I knew the landscape of my childhood had changed forever. Owls, too, came near at night. By day, the titmouse built a nest in the birdhouse, the crow in the cypress, the rabbit in the rosemary, but the owl house yawned, its door a vacant O. As with any apocalypse, lizards, birds, and spiders thrived. How I reckoned by the moon, its constantly in constant circle. Moon of little long day night, a circle like the O in hope traced over and over. The circle was the O in hollow, in echo, in home, perfectly empty. So the book does try to evoke the sense of being in a home, a place so familiar that became so unbearably strange because we were limited to our time within the walls. And at the same time, the first summer of the pandemic, there were 3 missions to Mars that took off in June from the United States, from China, and from the United Emirates. And the contrast of being locked into a house while people are trying to get to Mars was shocking, to say the least. Listening to Mars, ear pressed to my laptop small speaker that plays a recording captured by seismometer, a bass tone, drones, some 140 million miles from Earth, kabillion being another useful term, because Mars seems a million kabillion miles from anything I know, gusting unseen across the parched red surface, only accidentally captured by the InSight lander's equipment, instead tuned to intercept signals from Mars' deep interior. The poem goes on to capture this. There was also this video that they had the Mars lander took of this wind on a faraway planet. And I think all of these elements just serve to make life seem even more strange. So it is a pandemic chronicle in some ways. It does have a narrative arc. I tell people a lot of times with poetry, you read it, pick it up and open it. This one definitely is telling a story. Thank you.
Thank you, Sally.
All right. Hello, my name is Jen Gaston, and this is my book, The Sun Greeters. The Sun Greeters is set in on UCSC campus, UC Santa Cruz. And yeah, how many banana slugs do we have? Yes. Yes. And it's very much my love song to Santa Cruz. The book is told from the point of view of a character in her life between lives. She dies on the first page, falling from tree 9, if you know it, and tells the story after her death. I am going to also read a piece from, if you're into angel numbers, page 222. Right. We die like stars die, not all at once, but fading gradually from the moment we are born. And when the light finally goes out, it's because we have given everything away completely. It's a magical thing to give everything away. And the light, it's everything we do, think, act, feel, radiating outward in every direction like drops of water returning to the source. It's our soul. Like it wasn't ours after all. It just was soul or God or love or whatever. And it's like the air, ours and then not ours and part of a bigger system we can only see the half of. Did you know you can see the light of stars years after they finally burn out? That thought gives me hope about my own light reaching out across the darkness, but damn, we are so much smaller than stars. You are every person you have ever encountered, and every book you have ever read, and every painting you have ever examined, and every snap pea you've ever tasted, and every sunrise and every star. But you already knew you were a star.
Thank you, authors. Does anyone from the audience have a question that you'd like to ask?
Yeah, please. What is your name?
What do you think the most difficult part was when you were writing your books?
For me, the most difficult part was that I don't think I'm a writer. So I'm a high school English teacher and I wrote a book and I'm not quite sure how it happened. So I feel a little bit like a fraud. That's why I won't read from it. But I, beyond that, the book sort of wrote itself. I've been collecting ghost stories for a really long time, and I've been thinking, there's so many stories from San Jose, somebody ought to write a book about them. And then it just kind of occurred to me that I could do it, so I just did it. I think it really helped that I wrote it during the pandemic. I had time, I was at home, I didn't have anywhere else to go or anything else to do besides, teach remotely. So perhaps if this was sort of my day job and I depended on this for an income, I would have a better answer for you.
I think the hardest part for me was imagining that since we were all living through the pandemic and there were so many unpleasant, terrifying aspects, that why would anyone want to read about it? So to sort of find my way into these poems, I was teaching at San Jose State, and I was also teaching some workshops on chronicling pandemic experience, because our impulse as people is to put that stuff as far behind us as we can, to get back to normal. We all just wanted to get back to normal. Even now, it's like it could seem so far away, and yet it was such a tremendously impactful time in our kind of our consciousness. So I felt it was important to capture the stories, then to put them together and to feel like was a valuable project. It just, as a writer, sometimes you have to write what you love and what is coming together for you. And then if there's an audience, great. And if there's not an audience, okay. So I think just continuing to put it together, not knowing if it would ever be published, which is, for poets, I think, a very difficult aspect of writing poetry.
I think the way I would answer this question is, when I was a kid, I would look to maybe my parents to know if something I did was good enough. And as I got older, then I would look to my friends to see if it was good enough. And I went here for graduate school with Daryl and Elizabeth. And then I would look for my teachers to defend Sally, and I would look for my teachers to know if it was good enough. And I saw a lot of external validation. And I think the only person who needs to think it's good enough or done is yourself. And it took a really long time to come to that conclusion. And then so I think the hardest part is your editor mind telling you it's either not done or it's not good enough yet. And then I like to channel Dory from Finding Nemo and sing to myself, just keep swimming, just keep writing, just keep writing. Because even if it's not good enough yet, if I just keep going, then hopefully it will be.
Very good.
Thank you, authors. I'm going to ask a question of my own right now, and it's a multiple question. You could choose whatever part you think resonates with you. So place seems to be a strong element of your work. Can you share what made you choose this place, or what role does place have in the overall book, or is place a character?
So place is really the purpose of my book. So the purpose of the book was to gather stories and folklore from our city and to put them in one place, which is the book. So what I found really interesting was, even though, as I said, I included a lot of the history, so this is very specific to San Jose. As I was looking at these ghost stories, I found that they transcend our city and they appear in other places around the country and in other places around the world. So we have a vanishing hitchhiker. It is specific to Hicks Road in South San Jose. There's also a vanishing hitchhiker, famously on Archer Avenue in Chicago. There's one in Denver. The story itself probably came from Scandinavia in the 1600s. So while place is really important and very specific, it also, my book transcends any one specific place. These are stories that are universal and they connect us in that sense too.
Well, I think I've already kind of indicated that the two places, I guess, we think of in the book, home is the home base, and we didn't get to choose, right? It was chosen for us. The choice there was to explore that space and that place and that time. The other place is sort of the imaginative place of Mars that took on a role both of longing as to see the human accomplishments of making ships that can fly from our planet to another unseen, unknown world. I myself wanted to escape from my house. So there was a thing where Mars became an imaginative space, both as an escape, also as something to watch out my window, because the place of home, I know for me, what I saw out the window became larger than life, since it was the most thing that I watched. So the night sky on those very many sleepless nights played a large role.
So my book is set on the UC Santa Cruz campus, and one of the reviewers, indie reader Kirkus, did say that Santa Cruz is very much a character in the book. If you've ever lived in Santa Cruz or been to Santa Cruz, it's very thick in the vibe. Keeps Santa Cruz weird and all of that. So the place, it just reeks of Santa Cruz. Vibe wise. In the book plot wise, the characters are trying to recreate Elfland, and that's not a magical mystical. Ooh, it's not fantasy. It's a real place that existed where College 9 and 10 are now. And so they're trying to recreate this hangout of yesteryear. And so the location of that is very central to the plot as well. But I think I already said this, Santa Cruz haunts me. The book is about a ghost. However, my memories of Santa Cruz 20 years later are still just very raw and very real. And so, yeah, I'm in love with Santa Cruz. And so this is a result of that.
Well, I have many more questions, as I'm sure all of you do too, right? So let's visit these wonderful authors when we're done listening to panels. Thank you, everybody. Thank you.
Can we get another round of applause for our authors? Thank you. All right, so we're going to have our last panel of the day. If our authors would come on up and bring your name tags. And Essie Barroso Ramirez will be our moderator from this panel. She is a librarian with San Jose State University.
Hi, everybody. Buenas tardes. Good afternoon. While we wait for our authors to come on up, don't be shy. I'll go ahead and introduce myself. My name is Essie Barroso Ramirez. I am a research services and social sciences librarian here at San Jose State University. And I'm born and raised in Santa Cruz, actually. So it was interesting to hear a different perspective on what I lived. So I chose the social justice and equity panel because social justice and equity is intrinsic to my being as a very proud daughter of Mexican immigrants and as a first generation woman of color, scholar, and faculty member. So I really wanted to thank all of our authors and thank my panel for agreeing to come on up here and share their works. So I'll go ahead and ask after you get settled, if we can go down and introduce yourself. I don't want to butcher anyone's names. So if you could please introduce yourself and give us an overview of your book. Thank you.
Hello. Buenas tardes. Good afternoon. My name is Doctora Christine Vega. I'm an assistant professor of Chicano Studies here at San Jose State, and I'm originally from Los Angeles. I am one of the co-editors and co-authors of the Chicana Motherwork anthology. I need to honor the mujeres who helped put this edited book together. So I'm gonna shout out their names because this is also their labor. Comadre Cecilia Caballero, Yvette Martinez Wu, Judith Perez Torres, and Michelle Tellez, and then myself, Christine Vega. You said to kind of introduce a little bit of the book, or? Okay, so I'm gonna be, since I'm an educator, I am gonna read a little bit of the introduction to give you the context around this book, the dream, the resistance, the refusal, and the fight for visibility for pregnant presenting people, but particularly for pregnant mujeres, mothers of color in the academy. So this edited collection of research, testimonials and essays about Chicanas and other women of color mothering was born out of a collective dream, imagined together through tears, laughter, meals, and many, many conversations, organized in 4 parts: separation, migration, state violence, and detention. Second part is Chicana, Latina, women of color mother activists. The third part, intergenerational mothering and loss and reproductive justice and holistic pregnancy. This book showcases research and testimonials by Chicana and other women of color mother scholars and activists who center mothering as an act of transformative labor within academic and community spaces through an intersectional lens. The seeds of Chicana Motherwork Collective was first planted by Michelle Tellez's writing on single Chicana mothering in academia. In her introduction to the term Chicana Motherwork in 2011 and 2014, and in late 2014, we, the mothers I roll called, Cecilia Caballero, Yvette Martinez Wu, Judith Perez Torres, and myself, Christine Vega, and Michelle Tellez, met in person and presented together for the first time at the annual American Studies Association conference on a panel entitled Mothers of Color in Academia. Since the ASA presentation, we have been working together as a Chicana Motherwork Collective to amplify Chicana and mother color voices within academia and beyond through podcasting, publications, and presentations. And we just had our 10-year anniversary of being a collective in September. So we've seen our children grow up. And so drawing from our first published article, we define Chicana Motherwork as a strategy for collective resistance within institutions that continue to marginalize us. That's our offering as a colectiva of mother scholars. A lot of us have left the academy. Some of us remain in the academy. Some of us still resist the academy and are doing work that is creative, engaging, spiritual, internal, and bring joy. So now I'm going to pass it to my dear friend and comadre, Victoria Duran.
Hello, peace. Much gratitude for you being here today. Much gratitude for the organizers of this beautiful event. I just want to start us with some breath work and grounding in our collective moment right now. I think that this moment that we are connected through breath, and it is through this breath we are here connected through land here on Muwekma Ohlone land. And I really hold space for the Muwekma Ohlone also seeking federal recognition. And I particularly want to hold through this land the mothers of that we hold in our lineage, and also gratitude for those who have supported the mothers to do and be and exist in this world. I want to take a moment to also recognize our children. And when I say our children, I think that all of our children are ours and our responsibility. And I really hold dearly children in Palestine in this moment, the most children who have amputees in the world right now. I think of what it means to mother, and I hold dearly in this moment Palestinian mothers, and the work that we do that is in connection. And I really want to hold and think about displaced folks across the world and what it is to this call for mothering and the other work. And this contribution is porque sin madres no hay revolución. Without mothers, there's no revolution. Without mothers, there's no change. And really grasping at the root of change is to be radical at the root and getting to the source. And so a bit about myself, I am Victoria Isabel Duran. Dr. Duran is what my students call me, but a little bit about myself. I'm from Eastside San Jose. I am a daughter to my parents who are in the back of the room, Ramon Duran and Maria Duran. I am a partner to Emil. I'm a mother to Amara, Emiliano, and Maceo. And I'm an educator of 17 years in East San Jose, and I teach ethnic studies, and really that's been informed in praxis, which we'll talk about as I share. My coming to this work was during the course of my doctoral journey. I had all three of my babies, and also my dissertation baby was really the heart of my offering called Mala and Mala Madre, which is a framework that I offer in Chicana Motherwork Anthology. And it came because access to really getting into that writing space and to thinking about how do I take all these theoretical ideas and move into action, and that praxis of it is really what the podcast and how I came to learn of Chicana motherwork, and hearing Dr. Vega's beautiful voice in this work really moved me and opened my heart space to what is possible. And I look forward to sharing more around my Mala Madre framework through this work today.
Hello, my name is Alessandra Harris. I'm the author of 3 novels, and my latest book that was released in May is In the Shadow of Freedom, The Enduring Call for Racial Justice. My 3rd novel is set in San Jose and follows a family where the husband was recently incarcerated, and the family is trying to put their life back together after that incarceration. And when I was researching that book, I just realized how hard it really is for people who are formerly incarcerated, and learned a lot more about incarceration and how it really impacts Black and Brown people in this country. So in 2020, the 10th anniversary edition of The New Jim Crow by Michelle Alexander came out. That was the seminal work on mass incarceration. And when she spoke about the book, she was saying that what the country needs is really a moral and spiritual revolution around the issue of incarceration. And since I am also a writer for many Catholic publications, I decided that I would be that person who wrote a book specifically about the history of slavery, Jim Crow, and current day mass incarceration, and how that intersects with the moral and spiritual call for us to do something about that. So thank you for having me today.
My name is Tiffany Unarsi-Berry, and my book is Songs of the Sun. I am a musician, a mother, and a music educator, and I grew up in San Jose. I am an adjunct lecturer here at San Jose State. I teach music teachers how to teach children music, and in my 22-year career as an educator of music, I did not see or hear Filipino music or our home language sung in choir or in the music classroom or arrangements in orchestra. I set out to just share music midway in my career when I noticed that other educators who were non-Filipino were sharing our music. And I thought, oh, wow, that's possible. Like, we can actually be seen and we can have Filipino music included in the curriculum. And so that's what my book centers around. It's a functional purpose to help other music educators teach multicultural music and expand it so that it includes other Asian languages and cultures. But I think my more important purpose for having written this teaching resource is representation, and so that other Filipino children like myself when I was younger could be seen and we could see parts of ourselves in the curriculum in public schools. So I look forward to sharing more about my book if you want to come to my table, but thank you so much for letting me be here.
Good afternoon. I'm Tanya Bakker. I'm a professor of women, gender, and sexuality studies here at San Jose State. And shameless plug, we have lots of information about the program at my table. Please stop by, pick up some stickers. My book is called Reproductive Justice, Adoption, and Foster Care. And I came to this book, so my research up until this book was in reproductive justice generally and sort of like global women's health issues. And 10 years ago, my spouse and I, we adopted our son through foster care. And that journey really radicalized me about these so-called systems of care and forced family separation. And my co-author and I, Dr. Krista Benson at Grand Valley State University in Michigan, who also is an expert in critical adoption studies, we met through another book project, and through our conversations decided, we really need to write about this because in the field of reproductive justice scholarship, there isn't a whole lot of discussion about foster care and adoption. And in the field of critical adoption studies, there's not a whole lot of discussion of reproductive justice. So, it's been a personal and scholarly and political journey for me. My dad is an immigrant from India who was born under British colonial rule. And my grandmother, she had a arranged marriage. She was in her early teens when she had her first child, and really didn't have a lot of say over, her sort of reproductive destiny. And my dad was about 13 when partition occurred, and so his family, actually, they were living in what's Pakistan now. They had to basically flee, and his family was separated for a period of time. Half the family went to one part of India, half the family went to another part of India. And so, kind of reflecting on how his experience of family separation, forced family separation, due to larger systems of like colonization and racism and all different kinds of systematic oppression, has really traveled through generations to like my generation. And then my son is experiencing a form of forced family separation, and we're kind of creating our sense of family in that way. So the book kind of looks at how forced family separation is this theme throughout history, and US history in particular, that is about empire building, about colonization, about making certain families and bodies legitimate and legible, and other bodies and families not legitimate or legible. And so the book traces forced family separation through, the Indian the Indian boarding schools, family separating of families during enslavement, forced family separation at the border under the Trump administration, which I can talk about more because that's going to be like 2.0 coming. And how we have to look at this through a feminist, reproductive justice, transnational lens that is about, again, like empire building and colonization. Thanks.
Thank you all for sharing. Please give them a hand. I certainly have questions, but I'd like to open it up to the audience. Does anyone have a question?
Were there any organizations that you worked with that were helpful in writing or publishing the book?
So I believe the question was, were there any organizations that were helpful while writing or publishing the book? Thank you.
There weren't any like formal organizations that I relied on too much, but I did have a lot of accountability groups that I used. So having friends or colleagues that were also working on some kind of research project, we would either meet in person or we would meet via Zoom. And it was basically just to like keep ourselves on track. And I find that doing research and writing is very exciting, but it can also feel really isolating. And academia in general can feel really isolating too. So one way to sort of challenge that and resist that is to actually build community and write in community. And that was really, really helpful for me.
From my experience, I mean, I actually didn't intend to write this book. I was just looking to have more material to teach in my everyday job. And I was accessing my prior experience of being Filipino American and being a child of immigrants. And the communities that I was in were in music education communities, music organizations where I was going to professional development, conferences and workshops. And when I started to share, a song or an activity that I was doing and teaching to my students, then other people started to notice. And that's actually how the book happened. I had presented at a national music educator conference in Salt Lake City, and some people wanted to include some of my material in their book. And then I said, oh, okay, well, that's really nice. But then some of my colleagues were like, whoa, you should write your own book. Why are you going to give your material to somebody else? And that's actually how, when I had, declined to have my material shared in someone else's book, they said, yeah, you should write a book. So I think the community aspect is really important. I feel very lucky that I have this and that I was able to get published. But it wouldn't have been for the connections and the things that I'm passionate about music education and music and the Filipino community. Without those connections, I don't think it would have been possible. So yeah, that was my experience.
Writing this nonfiction book was definitely more solitary than with the 3 novels. When I was writing the novels, I was in writing critique groups. And with this one, since I was under a tight deadline, I did just really like hunker down and write it. I did really draw on Black American scholars and some abolitionist organizations, prison abolitionist organizations, and other organizations that are working to end mass incarceration.
For my writing process and really for my healing process, I want to center Chicana Mother Work was that organization of lived experiences across academia, across community organizing. And so allowing myself to listen and immerse while also feel validated and affirmed in what I know my journey in academia was. Commuting, I attended University of San Francisco in that time, and having a source of community there while also forming and feeling detached from San Jose in many ways during my weekend commutes and being in this academic journey that I was in. And this reclamation of like, no, these are the mujeres whose stories inform and also exist within the mujeres of your family, Victoria. How do we tell that homemade theory, that story that is alive through that generational knowledge? So often we think about the generational trauma that gets passed down, and then I think of the resilience, the inventos, the invention, and that love of creating. So drawing from and inspired from homemade recipes, thinking about from my grandma Isabel and also from my grandma Victoria and her practice as writing poetry. And so in this spirit of healing, I wrote Mala Madre as a framework, which is for mama academic liberatory activist, and Madre as a framework of what it is to maintain hope, what it means to have audacious love, what it means to have determination. At the time, I said relentless resilience, but now I claim it as restful resilience. We need to be rested to show up. We need to be rested to be able to move this other work, and then emancipation. And so to do so, to mother in a time of state-sanctioned violence that has been there, and the time of moving worlds, right? And really these ruptures of holding grief and a lot of love and joy in this work, really holding our children and other people's children. I think about the journey and really having heard these affirmations and attending conferences and talks that really brought me to reflect about my practice in the classroom and thinking about, as an educator, how was I showing up informed by mothering, informed by the support of having my mother in my life, and what that was in our healing process too, about stories that were untold. And so really this process of research being communal in a dissertation process that in 2020, during the time of the shutdown, it was digital conocimiento spaces of inviting comadres and also what I know as comadres to co-mother, who inspired my journey, and as well as madrinas. And so thinking about who are the sisters who are shaping along in this journey, and having a shared testament of what it means to mother in the time of the shutdown of the pandemic, while also of the uprisings for George Floyd and movement. So that was really at the core of what this offering has really birthed into through organizing work.
Thank you. We didn't have any organizations to help us, but we did have the University of Arizona Press, the publisher, the press editor, Kristen Buckles, who believed in our vision from the very beginning. And because we were students, so when this book got published, we were 4 doctoral students, 1 professor, and we didn't know what we were doing, right? We just knew we were in the academy, and we didn't see ourselves reflected in the work we were reading. So this is the call to action to change that. And so that's how Chicana Mother Work was born, was out of like being invisible. And alongside that, so not an org, but a colectiva, which is Chicana Mother Work, right? But also a colectiva that existed at UCLA when I was a doctoral student, is the Mothers of Color in Academia at UCLA. So we also organized on campus for over 5 years to change policies. So those became our collective spaces of organizing and raising children while writing dissertations and collecting data at the same time. So it was a lot of work. And I have one of my former grad students in the audience, and I'm like, I'm tired of this work, right? So y'all are next to do this movement, right? I want to retire, and I'm not even like close to retirement age, right? Like I'm tired. But the colectivas came from a need of each other, right? Our children became part of those collectives as well. Our children came to campus with us a lot of the times. And that's what kind of like sustained us and held us. And I had and still have an amazing advisor, Dr. Daniel Solorzano, who was able to support this work from the very beginning. And that space, that academic space, the communal space, was what really helped me push forward, right? And birth these ideas and these resistance and in this work, right? So the first iteration of a lot of our published work came out of speaking this out loud with the community at UCLA, at the rack space with our advisors and our colegas, and while our kids are running around, right? Like it was just that became the space that we didn't know we had a vision for, but it just kind of happened. And the podcast world became like also we were actually airing live from a espacio, I think 1839 in East LA. So we were using their radio station, Radio Sombra, to talk about our experiences. And that, again, it's not an org, but it's a small business, a collective space that gave us a space to dream out loud. Our podcast is a little, it's on hiatus. The Chicana Mother Work is actually in alignment with rest. We're taking a break from 10 years of organizing and writing. And we're trying to dream now and just kind of go inward a bit. So I do want to honor that. The collective still exists. Now we just want to be homies. We just want to be friends to each other, right? Because we came in as activists and organizers and thinkers and writers. And so it's like, okay, now we can pivot. We can pivot a little bit.
Thank you. I really appreciate hearing from all of you. While I was hearing you speak, Dr. Vega, I did want to recognize that one of our panelists couldn't join us today, and that's Dr. Maria Ledesma, who is actually my dissertation chair. So thank you very much for the work that you do. I would like to ask that each of you either discuss what has inspired your work, which I know you've touched on, but if you'd like to elaborate, or or read an excerpt from your work. Thank you.
So I'll just read the first couple paragraphs that sort of set the book up. Reproductive justice, adoption, and foster care contends that as we critically examine systems of care work through adoption and fostering, the work happening in critical adoption studies, reproductive justice, transnational feminism, and human rights must also be a critical part of the conversation. Understanding practices of family separation and child removal necessitates considering the impacts of globalizing capitalism, colonialism, and empire building, as well as establishing and normalizing of systemic racism. This book argues that situating the colonial legacies of family separation, what it means to center the right to parent, and reproductive justice and transnational feminist frameworks in conversation with one another elucidates a more nuanced and comprehensive approach to recognizing the significance and impact of contemporary examples of family separation. This approach makes evident the connections between adoption and foster care with the intellectual and activist frameworks of human rights. Epistemologically, reproductive justice and transnational feminism meet at the point where both consider and interrogate neoliberal economic and political ideologies, the way that various people, mostly people of color, poor people, women, children, and indigenous people, are considered disposable. These processes work to undermine the public sphere so that social welfare networks naturalize capitalist values as if they are inevitable. Critical adoption studies also importantly connects with transnational feminism and human rights, as the field focuses on how adoption and foster care function not only as forms of family formation, but as mechanisms of globalizing capitalism and state formation. Thus, it is critical that any exploration of the reproductive experiences of marginalized individuals interrogate and complicate notions of choice to advocate for justice. And one thing I just want to say, like two other things I want to say about the book. So Krista and I both really, neither of us are adoptees. And we really wanted to focus and center on the voices of adoptees. And so we wrote several chapters, but in between those chapters, we have what we call interludes, which are interviews we did with various activists and scholars in the field who are, the 4 out of the 5 interviews are adoptees themselves. One is a scholar, Kimberly McKee, who works on transnational adoption from Korea and has created this idea of the transnational industrial complex. Another is Rue Ramos, who's an indigenous activist who works in Washington State with ICWA, which is the Indian Child Welfare Act, and a lot of different organizations that are dealing with Indian child removal. And Lisbeth Bench, who is a artist who was a systems involved youth herself, and then now does like work with kids in youth in group homes. We also have Shannon Riley, who's a transracial adoptee, who's a novelist and author. She recently wrote a children's book about transracial adoption. And then Julian Aragon, who's a human rights lawyer and has done a lot of work around reproductive justice on the Marshall Islands. So we also paid these people for their time, which was really important to us through a grant that we received. And Lisbeth, who's an artist, did the cover of the book, which I think is, to be honest, like my favorite part of the book. It's so beautiful. So we were able to actually also pay her for her work in doing the art as well. So again, like just to really kind of acknowledge the contributions of those folks and also to really center the voices of adoptees.
Well, I kind of want to teach you something from my book. So if you're down to learn some Tagalog, is that okay? Yeah. Okay. So this is just a chant. I'm not going to make you sing, but I'll teach this to you. If you could be my echo, sao sao suka mahuli taya. Very good. And I want you to pretend that you're holding some lumpia, right? That's your fingers lumpia, and you're dipping it in sauce or vinegar, because in Filipino culture, we love vinegar, which is suka. And you are dipping, we like to dip lumpia into suka. Okay, and that's what it's about. It's dip, dip, vinegar. The last one is it. So you're gonna point the beat on your hand like this. Sao, sao, suka. Be my echo. Sao, sao. Mahuli taya. Very good. I'm going to say it a little bit longer, and then you're going to echo. Sao, sao, suka, mahuli taya. Sao. Because even when you're just doing this, you're practicing beat. Yeah. And then teaching children how to keep the beat and like the meter. And so this is actually a hand game that we play. And if I were to play it with my neighbor right now, can you put your lumpia right there and you're doing the beat ready? You're going to say it with me. Here we go. Sao, sao, suka, mahuli, taya. Oh, I caught her on the last beat. So you can play it with somebody near you. So somebody right next to you, could somebody be the lumpia and do it really quick. We'll do a quick game with your neighbor right now. Ready? Turn to somebody close by. Hurry, hurry. Here we go. We'll do it together. And you're just going to try to catch the lumpia on that last beat. Ready? Sao, sao, suka, mahulita, yeah. Very good. And you just have to try to grab. So that's just a simple hand game that is played in the Philippines. Before iPads, my parents would play that with us at line in Disneyland or at the grocery store when we were bored. And then, I played it with my 3 children when they were really little. And I thought, wow, we can turn this into like a beat game that we can play in music class and then learn how to keep the beat when we play the barred instruments. And then also we use it I use it because we can't use eeny, meeny, miny, mo anymore because of its controversial history. I use this as an elimination game. So for myself, if I'm picking something at the grocery store, I'll go, sao, suka, mahulita. Yeah, okay, I'm gonna grab that one. And so there's many different ways. So that's something from my book. I guess another thing that I'm inspired by, this has opened a lot of opportunities to connect with the Filipino community too. And I'm meeting a lot of Filipino music educators who haven't felt seen in, you know, the education world. And so to have something like this where they feel seen and they feel like their students can feel seen as well. I'm also, because I'm excited and care a great deal about representation in the Filipino American community in the United States, especially in California. I'm trying to get a street in San Jose renamed after the Philam labor leader Larry Itliong, and that's something that I would like to see happen right here, Park Avenue, like intersecting with Plaza de Cesar Chavez. So there's lots of opportunities for more representation to happen, and I think each one of us has an opportunity to make it happen. So, thank you.
So I'm going to read a quick excerpt from the introduction of my book. And what this part in particular is trying to talk about is how what we saw with the George Floyd protests in 2020 and the police killing of African Americans is really just the tip of the iceberg. And that really the contributions of African Americans have been denied from the beginning of this country, and especially now with the political climate. One such African American who has received intense backlash is Nicole Hannah Jones, who created the Pulitzer Prize-winning 1619 Project, published in the New York Times Magazine in 2019 to commemorate the 400th anniversary of the beginning of American slavery. Hannah Jones' aim was to reframe the country's history by placing the consequences of slavery and the contributions of Black Americans at the very center of the American national narrative. For far too long, Black Americans' historical importance has been a footnote in U.S. history. But the 1619 Project's forceful argument proved that Black people literally and figuratively helped build this country. And the profits from their forced labor and their innovation fueled the Industrial Revolution, creating what has become the richest and most powerful country today. According to Yale historian David W. Blight, the nearly 4 million American slaves were worth some $3.5 billion, equivalent to $42 trillion today, making them the largest single financial asset in the entire U.S. economy, worth more than all manufacturing and railroads combined. Yet while Black Americans who are descendants of people who were enslaved make up 14% of the American population today, they only own 2% of the wealth in America. In contrast, white Americans who make up 60% of the American population today own 90% of the wealth. The descendants of Black Americans who were brutally exploited and denied the fruits of their labor are now calling for what is rightfully owed to them. Like Martin Luther King Jr. said, we refuse to believe that there are insufficient funds in the great vaults of opportunity of this nation. So we have come to cash this check, a check that will give us upon demand the riches of freedom and security of justice.
I'm curious, do any of you have a spider plant at home? Yeah, what's special about the spider plant? What does it do? It can keep growing. And what does it do to keep growing? It makes babies. And something special about the spider plant is that it transforms, it's an air purifying plant. It transforms the toxins. And so this visual representation of Mala Madre is the spider plant, which is known as a Mala Madre. And I think about what it means to release your babies into the world and to transform the toxic conditions. I want to really honor my advisor, or my advisor, my advisor from USF, Emma Fuentes, who was really pivotal in supporting me in delivery of this baby, as well as Dr. Rebecca Burciaga from San Jose State. And we went on a walk together, and she informed this really love note to mothering in the form of the spider plant. Mothers are the something else. Mothers are the other. The infinite possibilities of what comes after the M in mother strikes transformation against institutions. These systems are essentially what disempowers mothers to act on their radical revolutionary mothering. Mala is an ownership of not having it all together, not having all the answers, and not having all the hope in the exact moment. It is the will and determination to make things happen in the name of our children and their children. Mala is learning to be purposeful and intentional with time and honoring the physical, spiritual, and authentic connections of love with our partner's children, our village, because nothing is permanent, yet everything is infinite. It is seizing each moment while forgiving ourselves while we lose sight of these values. Mala Madre is constantly negotiating the following questions while engaged in praxis. What does it mean for me and my children and comunidad to be a mother scholar in academia? To what extent does my role as a mama influence my role as educator? And how am I intentional with my corazón, with my time and familia in my role as activista? How do I embody liberatory critical hope during these trying times? The utopia I envision for my future is one in which neoliberalism and hegemony can only be abolished by cultivating critical consciousness, self-determination, and critical hope. Cultivation through Mala Madre is centered in anti-racism, honoring indigenous knowledge, and elevating counter-narratives. Fighting dispossession through cultivation creates spaces of tension. Within these spaces of tensions, liberation resides.
The section I'm going to share is the co-author chapter I co-wrote with Mothers of Color in Academia, the UCLA. And it's one of the last chapters under the Loss, Reproductive Justice, and Holistic Pregnancy. And I'm gonna shout out the mothers who helped co-author this piece, which is Nora Cisneros, Liana Hidalgo, and Yvette Martinez-Vu, and myself. Somos las mothers of color de academia, MOCA. As low-income students, mothers, fathers, queer, and gender non-conforming parents of color, we face racialized, gendered, class, and other barriers to sustain our families and fulfill our educational aspirations. This is an excerpt from one of our MOCA statements. Soy mamá. The response, somos mamá. When mothers of color are under attack, what do? Stand up, fight back. It's one of our chants from a protest on campus. Somos las, or we are the mothers of color in academia, an effort led by women of color that challenge exclusion and disrupts the silencing of our existence in academic spaces. In this chapter, we highlight MOCA and our grassroots efforts to identify the gap that so many academic institutions have in providing adequate resources for student parents. We also showcase a form of resistance we call fierce mothering to demonstrate how this strategy has led to tangible changes on our campus. We are inspired by Grace Gamez's framework of fierce mothering and the possibility it holds for mothers in oppressive contexts. Gamez reminds us that fierce mothering is intergenerational and stems from collective concern. MOCA also offers a form of fierce mothering informed by the concepts of Chicana feminist praxis, spatial entitlement, and the rascuache aesthetic to create institutional changes that support student parents and higher education. Our fierce mothering also includes a form of mother scholar activism, a call to center and to act on the power of mother scholars of color as critical members of the academic community. And so that was like our beginning stages of this chapter. And to inform that, I want to read out to you some of our demands. Not all of them made it. These were our demands to our university as doctoral students. The off-campus daycare center for student parents is located 30 minutes away from campus within family housing. Geographically, segregating student parents, particularly for subsidized families, is discriminatory. The additional stops in the commute affect our children's dinner and even routines, which we all feel the next morning. And y'all know what I mean. If you're driving a car and you have a kid in the back who's hungry and tired, you're hungry and tired. And so we feel those pressures, right? As Fear Mothers, we have advocated for the needs of student parents, especially Title IX recipients in town halls, graduate student associations, and orientations. For the last few years, we have organized and met with on-campus administration and staff to discuss the existing gaps and inequities. We have been placed in committees for student parents to be heard and to advocate for all students with children. Since then, our efforts have moved this work towards change and open conversations for change with undergraduate students, parents, staff, faculty, policyholders to accommodate the needs of the student parent community. And this also included folks who clean our campuses, feed the students, and maintain the university, right? Some of these needs include more spaces available for student parents on campus, integration of all children with faculty and medical staff, which will decrease the ludicrous wait list. There was a 3-year wait list to get into daycare. By that time, if you're an undergrad, you wouldn't have daycare. If you're a doctoral student, you're lucky to even make it once your kid's 2 years old. So it was a ridiculous wait list, and this is nationwide, not just at my former campus. More childcare centers on campus, which also decreased the wait list. Transparency of funds and allocations, ensuring equitable access for all children, inclusive, safe, shaded, clean, and green spaces for all children, equitable pay for all educators, and on and off campus daycares. So those were some of the asks we demanded. It also included, there's more to that because our original demands list is longer, it's 14 demands. Some of those demands included something so simple and basic as having pumping supplies at the on-campus student store. We got that happened, so I was really happy. Clean lactation rooms, which were most of the lactation rooms were closed on campus. This is UCLA, right? And so we got some lactation rooms open for us, access 24 hours a day. And there's many more, but this was again back in the day when I was a grad student. These efforts, the push for policy change, it took a lot of time out of our own personal time that we weren't paid for and compensated, right? This is why I tell my students I'm tired, right? I'm tired. But it was really important work, and I was really proud of this activist work. And I'll stop there.
Thank you. I want to thank all of our authors, and another round for my panel, please. As we wrap up our panels, I want to thank everyone in this room for creating community with us, and I want you all to continue to support libraries and consider that these spaces exist for recreational education in addition to academia, and that in these spaces we get to exist without having to compensate for our presence financially. So thank you all, and I'll hand it over to Kyle.
All right, thank you, everyone. I just have a few things. I know it's been a long program, so I will get through them really quickly, and then we can, I want to encourage everyone to visit author tables, buy books from the authors if you want to. First of all, I wanted to say thank you to our local lit planning committee for organizing this event, to our SJPL library director, Jill Bourne, for her support, for San Jose State University Library Dean Michael Meth for showing his support for the program. We want to thank both the SJSU and SJPL marketing teams for their continued support, and also SJSU's media services team for helping us with the live stream and setting up the sound and everything today. Thank all of you for coming to support your local authors. Without you, we couldn't do this. We have a short survey that we're going to pop up on the screen in just a minute. If you could take a minute, hit it with the QR code and give us some feedback. Let us know how we are doing. And then we have a couple of authors that we just wanted to acknowledge that couldn't be here today. Keenan Norris, Maria Ledesma, and Carlos Alberto Sanchez. We want to thank them. They supplied us with copies of their books. You can find them in our collection. So that's it. Thank you all very much for staying to the end. We will do the raffle prizes in just a second. I want to say happy holidays to you all. Be well, and we hope to see you again next year for LocalLit 2025. Thank you. If any of the authors are interested in coming up for a photo, we will try to do that as well.